Now, if you're a PR agent and you are desperately trying to get out these complaints for your clients, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, to help change the environment of everybody who's calling them out on their BS, what do you do next? You can't get any of the big guys to publish it. So you start leaking to TikTokers, independent journalists, because you view these people to be stupid, right? So you're like, okay, they'll absorb the risk. They'll definitely publish this if they think that they have an exclusive.
Something isn't adding up. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are being accused of pulling off one of the most calculated PR campaigns in Hollywood history. But here's the twist. Mainstream media refused to play along. Allegedly, their team leaked HR complaints meant to take down Justin Baldoni. But when outlets like TMZ, Daily Mail, and NY Post refused to publish them, they took a different route.
Somebody in Blake Lively's camp was shopping around what they claimed to be HR complaints to various tabloids and publications, namely TMZ, Daily Mail, and the New York Post.
They turned to independent journalists and TikTokers, betting they would push the claims without fact-checking. And now, Candace Owens says she's about to expose everything.
There's a hypocrisy and a fraudulence there that the public is picking up on. They weren't the first to do this. It was Blake Lively, it was Ryan Reynolds, this was their strategy, and now they kind of want to put the genie back in the bottle. But guess what? The genie does not want to go back in the bottle. The genie likes to be free, okay? And we're now all paying attention.
Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are one of Hollywood's golden couples, but according to Candace Owens, they've been orchestrating a behind-the-scenes smear campaign to destroy Justin Baldoni. The allegations against Baldoni, as we'll explore later, are shocking. But what's even more shocking is how these claims surfaced in the first place. It all started when a series of heavily redacted HR complaints appeared in media circles. These documents were vague, incomplete, and missing crucial details, yet someone wanted them in the spotlight. But here's where things got interesting. Major outlets refused to take the bait. Why? Because the complaints lacked verification, making them too risky for mainstream coverage. Therefore, when TMZ, the Daily Mail, and the New York Post all declined to run the story, Lively and Reynolds' team allegedly changed tactics.
There were other people as well who didn't find it to be entertaining and were just sort of like, okay. And you could see that they didn't want to be inserted into, I guess, what you could now refer to his various Deadpool scenes.
They didn't give up. Instead, they targeted independent journalists and TikTokers, content creators who might be more willing to publish the claims without proper scrutiny. The goal? Make the accusations go viral, regardless of credibility. But why go through so much effort? Why were they so desperate to have this story out there? Owens argues that this wasn't about justice. It was about controlling public perception. The couple allegedly wanted to shape the narrative before Baldoni could defend himself. And in today's world, where viral accusations often spread faster than facts, this strategy had the potential to work. However, the plan didn't go as smoothly as expected. Once people started digging into the details, glaring inconsistencies surfaced. Some TikTokers even began questioning who was really behind the leaks. And that's when things started falling apart. But this is just the beginning. The suspicious HR complaints against Baldoni might be even more questionable than the PR tactics used to spread them. Once the HR complaints against Justin Baldoni started circulating, people expected a smoking gun, something undeniable that would take him down. Instead, what they got were heavily redacted allegations that left more questions than answers. Candace Owens wasted no time tearing apart these claims.
It would have been wiser for them to take the mediation route, to settle, okay? To say, we cannot win this. But I can tell you that that's not exactly a planned route of escape for them anymore at this moment.
The documents accused Baldoni of serious misconduct, but the details were vague and crucial parts were blacked out, making it impossible to verify anything. But here's what stood out. One allegation claimed Baldoni had an orgasm on camera and pressured a co-star to keep the scene in the final cut. Another suggested he grabbed a female colleague's butt and then sarcastically dismissed her concerns. On paper, these sound like career-ending accusations, but if they were real, why weren't major outlets running with them? Owens points out that not a single mainstream media company was willing to publish the details. That in itself raised a red flag. Therefore, this isn't just about what's in the complaints, it's about who believed them and who didn't. If TMZ, Daily Mail, and the NY Post, outlets that love a scandal, refuse to publish, it suggests they saw something suspicious. But Lively and Reynolds didn't stop there. According to Owens, once the mainstream media refused to touch the story, they doubled down on their strategy. They allegedly fed the claims to independent journalists and TikTok influencers, assuming they wouldn't ask too many questions. And for a while, it worked. Some influencers began pushing the accusations without verifying sources, but once people started asking for proof, the entire narrative started falling apart. At this point, the question isn't just about Baldoni's alleged actions, it's about why these accusations were so carefully constructed and yet so unverifiable. But here's where things take another unexpected turn. Sony, the company that allegedly received these HR complaints, is nowhere to be found in the lawsuit, and that raises even more serious questions about what's really going on. At this point, the accusations against Justin Baldoni had already started falling apart, but one detail made the entire situation even more suspicious. Sony, the very company that supposedly received these HR complaints, is not even named in the lawsuit. Candace Owens finds this extremely telling. If Sony was aware of serious allegations of sexual misconduct and ignored them, wouldn't they be legally responsible? In a real case of workplace misconduct, the company handling the complaints would be a major target in any legal action. But that didn't happen. Instead, the lawsuit seems laser-focused on Baldoni alone, as if this wasn't really about justice, but about taking down one person. Therefore, why would Sony be left out of the lawsuit? Owens argues there's only one logical explanation. The case isn't about exposing workplace misconduct. It's about destroying Baldoni's reputation while keeping the attack controlled. If Sony had been included, the case would have involved higher levels of scrutiny. Corporate lawyers, internal investigations, and even external auditors would have been forced to step in. That means the truth, whatever it is, would have been harder to manipulate. But by keeping Sony out, the legal battle stays small, messy, and easier to control. So now, the pieces start coming together. A PR campaign was allegedly used to push a smear campaign. The allegations are vague and unverifiable. And now, the legal strategy seems deliberately structured to avoid too much oversight. But it doesn't stop there. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' legal team just pulled another move that has Owens calling foul. They delayed their own case in a way that suggests they don't have the evidence they claim to have.
Blake Lively's team filed essentially asking the judge for an extension to file their amendment. Okay, so just to slow that down for you. Blake Lively sued Wayfarer Studios. They then countersued them and were basically like, you guys are terrible. Here are the messages to prove it. And then Wayfarer Studios team essentially amended their complaint to include all of the stuff that us internet sleuths found about the New York Times, essentially showing that this article was a part of some larger scheme and that they had the data to prove it. So Blake Lively then said, when they showed up, like, well, we need time to now respond to their amendment. This like New York Times amendment, some other things were added as well, but that was kind of like the guts of it.
At this point, Candace Owens has already exposed glaring inconsistencies in this case. But if there was still any doubt that something shady was happening, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' latest legal move practically confirmed it. Instead of presenting the so-called damning evidence they allegedly have against Justin Baldoni, their legal team requested an extension to file their amended complaint. Now, if their case was as strong as they want the public to believe, why would they need more time? Shouldn't they be eager to present their evidence and let the facts speak for themselves? According to Owens, this is a classic delay tactic, a strategy used not to build a stronger case, but to buy time to control the public narrative. Think about it. If their accusations were solid, wouldn't they want to move forward as quickly as possible? If they had undeniable proof, wouldn't they be rushing to get it in front of the judge? But instead, they are stalling. This delay doesn't just slow down the case, it allows them to continue manipulating the media, keeping the story alive without actually proving anything. Therefore, what are they waiting for? Owens suggests that they might not have what they claim to have. If they did, there would be no reason to delay. Instead, they seem to be buying time, possibly hoping for new accusers to step forward or for the public to lose track of the inconsistencies. But here's the real twist. The judge wasn't having it. Instead of granting them a lengthy extension, the court gave them only one extra day. And to Owens, this was a major loss for Lively and Reynolds, exposing their legal strategy for what it really is. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds thought they could control the timeline of this case, but the judge had other plans. And Candace Owens believes this was a major turning point that exposed their true intentions. When their legal team asked for an extension, they likely expected weeks, maybe even months to regroup, craft a new narrative, and strengthen their strategy. But instead of granting them a significant delay, the judge only gave them one extra day. Just one day. That's not just a minor inconvenience, it's a huge blow to their legal team, because if they truly had damning evidence, they wouldn't need extra time to figure things out. They would already have their case locked and ready to go. Owens argues that this rejection signals something bigger. The judge sees through their tactics, and this forces them to file their amended complaint sooner than they wanted, limiting their ability to reshape the case in their favor. Therefore, this wasn't just a procedural ruling, it was a reality check. If their case was airtight, they wouldn't need a delay. If their accusations were ironclad, they wouldn't be scrambling for more time. Instead, they're on the defensive, trying to salvage a crumbling narrative. And with the mainstream media refusing to publish their claims, their PR tactics aren't working the way they expected. But here's where things get even more interesting. While Lively and Reynolds are losing ground in the courtroom, social media is exposing even more holes in their case. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds may have thought they could control the media narrative, but they didn't account for the power of social media. Mainstream outlets refused to run with their allegations, but that didn't stop them. They turned to independent journalists and TikTokers, hoping they would spread the claims without fact-checking. At first, it seemed to be working. A handful of TikTokers jumped on the story, pushing the allegations against Justin Baldoni without looking into the details. But then something unexpected happened. People started asking questions. And once online sleuths got involved, the cracks in the case became impossible to ignore. Some TikTokers even had their videos removed, allegedly after being contacted by Lively's team. There were rumors that Lively's team was trying to recruit more accusers, which raised even more suspicions. The allegations didn't add up, and people began questioning who was really behind the leaks. Therefore, instead of controlling the narrative, social media turned against them. And Candace Owens did not hold back. She called out the shady tactics, pointing out how desperate Lively's team seemed to be. If the case was so strong, why did they need to silence independent creators? Why did they need to recruit new accusers? The answer was becoming clear. This wasn't about justice. It was about manipulation. And now, social media was exposing them in real time. But just when it seemed like the situation couldn't get any worse for Lively and Reynolds, another explosive claim surfaced, this time about Ryan Reynolds' past. Just when it seemed like Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds were losing control of the narrative, Candace Owens dropped another bombshell. This time, it was about Ryan Reynolds' past. According to Owens, a former teacher of Reynolds personally reached out to her, claiming they had stories about his unusual behavior as a child. At first, this might seem unrelated to the lawsuit, but here's why it matters. Reynolds is known for his carefully curated public image, the charming, sarcastic Hollywood nice guy. But if his past reveals a pattern of manipulative behavior, it could change how people see him now. Owens suggests this teacher's testimony paints a very different picture of Reynolds' personality from a young age. What exactly did the teacher say? Details remain vague, but Owens hints that Reynolds was allegedly erratic, controlling, and manipulative as a student. Why would this matter? Because according to Owens, it aligns with the PR manipulation happening now. If Reynolds was controlling the narrative from an early age, what's stopping him from doing the same thing today? Therefore, this revelation isn't just a distraction, it adds another layer to the controversy. The lawsuit already had questionable allegations, shady PR tactics, and suspicious legal maneuvers. And now, Reynolds' own character is being called into question. At this point, everything is unraveling. The lawsuit, the PR campaign, and now even Reynolds' personal history is under the microscope. But here's the real question. What happens next?
Having to follow orders when the orders were so demonic.
Yes, absolutely.
So he gets called back again. This time it's from the President of the United States.
A direct attack on an American ship. 34 sailors dead, 171 injured, and yet the U.S. government's response? Silence. For decades, the USS Liberty attack has been erased from history books. The survivors were threatened, the investigation was buried, and the truth was locked away. But why? What was so dangerous about this incident that even the President of the United States refused to speak about it? Candace Owens isn't afraid to ask the hard questions, and after uncovering the truth, she isn't just talking about it, she's making sure the world hears it. Because once you know what happened on June 8, 1967, you'll start questioning everything. On a clear summer day in the middle of the Six-Day War, the USS Liberty sailed in international waters, a neutral vessel with no weapons capable of serious combat. The ship's role? Surveillance. It was there to observe, not to engage. But then, out of nowhere, Israeli jets launched a relentless assault. Candace Owens describes it as one of the most shocking betrayals in military history, an attack not from an enemy nation, but from a U.S. ally. And this was no random act of war. Survivors remember it all too well. Before the attack, Israeli reconnaissance planes had been flying overhead for hours, visibly identifying the USS Liberty as an American vessel. Its massive radio antennas and U.S. flag made it unmistakable. Yet minutes later, missiles, rockets, and machine gun fire rained down on the ship. The crew's attempts to call for help? Jammed. The ship's lifeboats targeted and destroyed. And then, the torpedoes. One ripped into the hull, killing dozens instantly. By the time the attack was over, 34 American sailors were dead, 171 were wounded, and the ship was left barely afloat. The official explanation? A mistake. But Candace Owens and the survivors don't buy it. Because what happened next is what turned this attack into something far more disturbing. The U.S. government didn't seek justice. They covered it up. Admiral Isaac Kidd allegedly gathered the survivors and gave them a direct order: forget what you saw. If you speak about this, you will be court-martialed, or worse. Owens points out that within just 7 days, the U.S. Navy wrapped up its so-called investigation without interviewing a single Israeli pilot and without presenting the overwhelming evidence from the surviving crew. If this was just an accident, why was the U.S. government so desperate to bury it? A tragic miscalculation or something far more sinister? Candace Owens doesn't believe in coincidences, and the more she looked into the USS Liberty attack, the clearer it became. This wasn't a mistake. It was a setup. One of the most chilling claims comes from survivor Philip Turney, who says this attack was planned a full year in advance.
They didn't talk to us, and we didn't talk to them. We weren't allowed to.
Okay.
And so it's two different crews. And we figured it out pretty quick what was going on, but yeah, it was so secret. I mean, everything was secret, very, very secret.
And the evidence, undeniable. The USS Valdez, another U.S. intelligence ship, was suddenly removed from the region right before the attack. Owens asks the obvious question: why was the Liberty left defenseless in hostile waters? Who ordered this?
Now you get these emergency orders and you have no idea where you're going. Are they giving you any information, or they're just saying it's an emergency, everybody get back in?
Everybody get back in, and we headed to Rota, Spain. We picked up 3 Marines. We had into the Mediterranean, and to go through the Rock of Gibraltar and all that. And all the ships were going this way, going the other way, and we were the only one going that way.
Okay. And still nobody's informing you about the Six-Day War?
We did find out that we were going into a war zone.
Okay. And what information, if any, did they give you?
None.
None. You're just going into a war zone. Prepare for anything?
No, we were prepared.
Survivors claim the goal was simple: sink the ship, blame Egypt, drag the U.S. into war. But then comes the most damning revelation: intercepted Israeli communications. Israeli pilots identified the ship as American before opening fire. They knew. Yet, according to reports, they were ordered to proceed anyway. Then came the moment that made Owens's blood run cold. The U.S. military responded. Jets from the 6th Fleet were sent to rescue the USS Liberty. But before they could arrive, they were ordered to stand down. And the order, it allegedly came from President Lyndon B. Johnson himself. His reported words: "I don't care about a few dead sailors. I will not embarrass my ally, Israel."
And then LBJ gets on the phone, and his exact words were, "I don't give a GD if all those sailors die. I'm not going to embarrass my ally, Israel." like I said in the letter. Now, how did he know that if we didn't know it? Who was attacking us?
Candace Owens does not hold back in calling this what it is: treason. Because this wasn't just about an American ship being attacked. It was about who really controlled American foreign policy. And if the USS Liberty had gone down, the Soviet Union was watching. Owens explains that a Soviet submarine had been tracking the incident and was ready to retaliate.
There was a submarine. The Russians were there too. If our ship goes down, Israel was going to get nuked by Russia. And that's a fact. It's on tape by the people that were there.
If the Liberty had sunk, World War III could have begun that very day. And yet, the U.S. government did nothing. Lyndon B. Johnson's unwavering loyalty to Israel didn't start with the USS Liberty attack. Candace Owens exposes his deep Zionist ties, which stretch long before he ever entered the White House. And who stood in his way? John F. Kennedy. JFK fought to limit Israel's nuclear ambitions. He pushed back against AIPAC before it became the most powerful foreign lobby in Washington. But when JFK was assassinated, everything changed. Owens raises the question the mainstream media refuses to ask. Did Israel have a role in JFK's death? And more importantly, why are the JFK assassination files still classified? The same way the full USS Liberty report remains locked away. If there's nothing to hide, why hide it? Owens doesn't just blame politicians, she calls out the media. She points out how mainstream outlets are more than happy to expose government corruption, but only when it serves their agenda. But when it comes to Israel, silence. Survivors of the USS Liberty attack have spent decades trying to tell their story. Congress won't listen, the media won't report it, and those who try, they're labeled conspiracy theorists and anti-Semites. Owens has a name for this tactic, shutting down dissent. But she refuses to be silenced, because the one thing they didn't expect is that Americans are finally waking up. Owens isn't just exposing the truth, she's taking action. She announces a $40,000 annual donation to the USS Liberty Veterans Association.
That personally, my family will donate $40,000 every year to your organization. And I'm asking if every single person who is watching this right now, and this will be in the millions, if every single person gives $1, just $1, we can keep their organization going. We can give them what they need to speak about this, and we can show them that despite the fact that we may all be existing under a government that is occupied, this is not who we are.
Ensuring that the survivors' fight for justice continues. And then she goes on the offensive. She calls out Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro, and every so-called conservative who refuses to acknowledge the USS Liberty attack.
Can I explain the USS Liberty incident? Sure. The USS Liberty incident is very frequently used by anti-Semites to suggest that Israel deliberately targets American ships and then pays no penalty. So both American naval records and Israeli Air Force records suggest that there was a case of mistaken identity wherein USS Liberty was in the Mediterranean in a place they were not supposed to be. Israel thought that it was an Egyptian ship and shot it. That's the actual full story. Now, there are a bunch of conspiracy theories on actually both sides of this. There's a conspiracy theory on the American side that suggests that Israel, for no reason that can be discerned, decided to shoot up an American ship to accomplish no one really can explain what. And then on the other side, there is a theory that I have not seen a lot of support for, that the USS Liberty was being used as a transmission vessel to send Israeli military locations to the Egyptians during the '67 war, and Israel knew that and shot it. Again, I think the evidence is lacking on both of those things. And there have been multiple naval investigations of the USS Liberty incident. They all come down on the same side, which is that this is a mistaken case of allied, quote-unquote, friendly fire.
Debate the survivors, she demands. If you think this is a conspiracy, face them and prove it. Silence. And then comes the line that sends shockwaves across social media. God saved us from God's chosen people. The internet explodes. But then, just when it seems like she's done, Owens drops her final bombshell. She hints at running for president, because this is bigger than one attack. It's about who really controls America. And just like that, the video ends.
I have never, ever had an inkling to run for president of the United States, despite people insisting on it. But hearing what happened to you, if I ever do run, it will be to honor you guys in the way that you should be honored. and to give the middle finger right back
I hope you do,
to the government.
No outro, no fade out. Just one final question. If your government can cover this up, what else have they lied about?